All right, can everybody hear me? Give me a wave if you can hear me. I'm waving at you. Very good. Sometimes this technology is a little bit, difficult for me. I'm of the older generation too, and sometimes this modern technology kind of flummoxes me, but James has got me well trained, and sometimes I can make it happen like today. Okay. So on Sunday, the University of Montana, in collaboration with Raptor View Research, came out to band the three chicks, Snap, Crackle, and Pop. And then our tech guru, James, went up to change the camera and reinstall a new microphone so that we could hear the birds. The first thing I'd like to show you is how that process went. So let's take a look at this. This is from the ranch camera, which had no sound, but I'll explain as the film goes on. So this is what we call the bucket truck, the lift. And you can see that Harriet is with her chicks and she's watching everything that's happening. Now, Harriet has experienced this for at least 10 of the last 14 years. So she's a little bit accustomed to this, but she doesn't like it anyway. And you can see here comes James is in the middle. He's operating the lift. And on the right, we have the chief scientist, Rob Dominich, and his assistant, Brian, on the left. They're going up to capture the chicks, and very soon you'll see her take off. She does it reluctantly. She wants to stay and protect her chicks, but when they get closer and closer, she knows that she has to leave herself. She doesn't like it at all. She'll be flying around the whole time that this operation occurs. So what they do is they take an insulated tub, that's that red thing that Brian is holding. It has some ice in the bottom, some of those ice packs that you put in your coolers, and then a towel on top of that to keep it nice and cool for the chicks. This was last Sunday morning at about 9:30. They wanted to do this in the coolest part of the day, because the big stress on those birds would be to be in the hot sun for a while. And we needed about an hour to change out the camera, etc. So they timed this with respect to the bird's size so that they could give us just a little bit more time with the birds out of the nest. And this was right at the edge of an acceptable time for the birds because they were getting very big. Now here you'll see Rob lean over and take the chicks out of the nest and put them in the red box. And our tech guru, James, is excellent driver for this complicated lift machine. So here they are taking the first one out, putting it in the box. These are very big chicks. They weigh at least a couple of 100 grams more than most of the chicks that they tag. Now this is the last one. And as soon as they get the last one in, they'll cover it so as not to distract the chicks and try to keep them from being too terribly frightened. You can see Harriet is just not happy with this at all. She keeps flying over and chirping. And I'm sorry we don't have a microphone because it's a very distinct chirp that I only hear during this time of year when the scientists come. It's a kind of a staccato, cheep, 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 cheep. It's very different than her call for food or that her call for danger of something else. So here they're taking the chicks down to the ground. And operating that lift is no small matter. But these guys are so good and so careful with the birds. I don't know that they've ever lost a chick in these operations, and they band birds all over Western Montana. It has enabled them to really understand where the birds go and how they fare. So here they are on the ground now, and they will take the chicks away, and James will go back up to the nest to change the camera. So here are the chicks. And just to make sure they don't stumble and fall or something, he puts the sheet back up on the box. So the scientists take off, and I want you to notice the two women with cameras. The one with the backpack is James's wife, Kate, and the other one with the blue sweater on, her name is Sandy. And in a minute, I'm going to show you some of the photos that they took of the actual operation, because where they're headed now, we couldn't watch with a web camera because they wanted to be in the shade of that tree. They wanted the chicks to be very cool and in the shade at all times. So now here's James back at the nest camera, and he has to take down one camera and put up another one. And it was a very complicated operation because he had to modify the pole. The two cameras don't mount the same way. So here he is taking off the camera that was destroyed by the lightning, and he's got another camera that he's going to put on there. And as you will see, Harriet keeps flying around. She's chirping this whole time, very upset. This is a stressful thing for the birds. There's no getting around that. But the banding gives us such good information on how to help protect these animals that we encourage the scientists to do this. It's kind of a mixed feeling. You want the information, and the scientists are incredibly dedicated to doing it correctly, but it is stressful, and it's bothersome to hear her cry out. It's emotionally troublesome to me to hear her crying out like that. She's an important bird to me. I'm very attached to her. So here he's taking out that horrible black plastic that Swoop brought. So this will alleviate that from being a danger for the chicks as they grow. He's kind of cleaning up the nest. This is something we always do when we go up there. And then he's going to head back on down. And the minute he's down, they're going to come with the chicks to put them back up. Everything was timed. James had everything ready and had everything tested and ready to go so that he could do it within 1 hour's time. No wasting of time on this operation. So James goes down to the bottom. And as soon as he hits the bottom, you'll see the scientists coming with the chicks. There's my hay stack behind the pole. We're just getting our hay right now. Here he comes, and as soon as he's on the ground, the scientist, you can see Harriet's shadow flying over him and over the nest. She's not a happy camper at all. Here come the scientists with the chicks. They want to get back up there just as soon as possible. They had a little more leisurely operation than James did, because normally it takes about 45 minutes, 15 minutes per bird, but they gave him an hour. So they wanted to get those chicks back up there as soon as possible. And you see the water bottle that Rob has, he's going to spray the chicks with water when he gets up there. Again, that's to make sure that they're cooled off. Heat is our enemy on an operation like that. If the bird is stressed emotionally because of all the handling, it will overheat if it's left in the hot sun without any cooling. Now, at some nests, they have left fish with the chicks. Here they are up at the nest, taking the birds back one by one, and you can see them take them out of the cool box and put them right back on the nest with their new bands on, and I'll explain that in just a minute. I'm happy to answer any questions at any time, so just let me know. And for those of you watching on our website, just chat your questions and I'm happy to respond.
Suzanne, I'm wondering how far high up in the air is that nest?
Well, the lift is now about 60 feet in the air. Not all lifts will go that high. We have to get a special lift delivered to do this. Okay, there he goes, spraying the birds to make sure that they're cooled down. All right, that's the end of that particular video. And I'm going to now show you a slide show with the photos that, hang on here, I got to get this all set up. Okay, so this is the woman who was dressed in blue with her camera. She is one of our Days at Dunrovin members, and her name is Sandy. She comes out frequently to take photos. She's just an excellent amateur photographer. She is retired from a career of taking photos of people's eyes for an optometrist's clinic. So she's very well versed in photography. So these are some of the photos that she took. You can see that she got some fabulous photos of Harriet. This is Harriet just coming off the nest, and you can see the alarm in her eyes, and she's chirping. This just really upsets me to see her so frantic, but at the same time, I know things are going to come out well in the end. And that's why we allow this to happen, because we know it's important information, and ultimately the birds will settle down and be just fine. Here she is landing on her perch to watch the whole thing with her chicks out of the nest. She's very stressed out. And here she is at the last, she just landed after the chicks were put back in the nest, and immediately on the right-hand side, you see that she is making an umbrella. She's bringing her wings out to shade the chicks to make sure they don't get too hot. She's just one heck of an osprey bird. I'll tell you, she's one wonderful mother. So here are some of the photos that Sandy took of the operation. Again, this is the main scientist, Rob Dominich. This is our tech guy, James, and this is the assistant, Brian, who's holding the ospreys. And here they are in the lift going on up. And here's what it looks like with the chicks in the box. Now, they're sitting on a towel that is over some cooling material, those ice packs that you would put in a backpack or in a cooler to keep things cool. And here are some of the tools that they will be using. The pliers to apply the bands. And here you'll see there are two different bands. These silver bands, which are the ones that are international, and they are, the numbers on those are determined by an agreement between Canada and the United States. They're international, and whenever that bird is found either dead or recaptured, they can trace all the information back with that band. However, you have to have the bird in hand to read that band. So what the people here in Montana do is put on these big anklets so that they can be seen through photographs. You don't have to have the bird in hand. You can see it through binoculars or with a long lens on a camera. And we've gotten a tremendous amount of information from seeing these blue bands. And they have 2 digits on them, sometimes a number and a letter. This year, only letters. And here's the box of equipment that travels with the Montana Osprey Project. And I want you to notice this stocking here. This is an important piece of equipment, and you'll soon see why. Okay, so this is Rob holding one of the chicks, and you can see where they are. They're under the shade of the tree. They're right near our ranch office. And in the back, you can see one of our horses, Whiskey, all saddled up, ready to go. So the people who came for a horseback ride were really intrigued by what we were doing, of course. It was a fun event for them as well. And here you can see the love and concern in Rob's demeanor. He's just a fabulous guy. In fact, the day before, when I texted him to ask him exactly what time they would be coming, I caught him rescuing a cat in a place north of Missoula. He'd found this cat that he had to rescue and was taking it to a foster home. This is a man who loves animals and who knows an enormous amount about birds of prey, raptors. He spent his life studying raptors and taking good care of them. It's a privilege to have him involved with us. So there you can see the use of the stocking. He puts the stocking on them so that they can't put their wings out, and he can put them on their scale. He's weighing them, which is an important indicator of their condition, of course. And then he's looking at all of their feather development to see that they are developed well and taking notes on them. And then he takes some blood from one of the wings. And this is a really delicate process. I know many of you have given blood. You know how hard it is to find a vein. This guy is incredible. Tiny little vein on these wings, and he gets it right every time. I've never seen him make a mistake. And then with this blood, they put it on little samples and send it in for DNA analysis. This will tell us whether these birds are males or females. And these guys made a guess on one of the birds. I'll tell you a little bit later. But they take the blood and use it to analyze for heavy metals and any kind of pesticides or anything that are in the environment. This really gives them a good clue as to what's happening in the Bitterroot Valley. The chicks only eat fish from the Bitterroot River, so they know that if they have heavy metals in their blood, that it came from the fish in the Bitterroot River. They are accumulators. Their blood accumulates all that. So it's a really good way to find out what's happening in the river as well as what's happening to the birds. And here they're putting on the two bands. On the right, they are using pliers to push together the silver band. And here they're putting the blue band together, which they use super glue to glue together. And this is the one that can be seen with photographs or through binoculars. And here he is showing some people their talons and their feet, which are very special because they are completely adapted for catching fish. And you can almost see in this photograph how rough they are on the bottom. They're like sandpaper for holding on to slimy fish. And one of their talons is like a thumb. It can go in the opposite direction and hold on to a fish. These birds are so well adapted for their fishing activities. He's just showing people here who are gathered around to watch what was happening. And here he's snipping a little bit of feather. Again, a feather can tell a great deal about the health of the chick. Excuse my cough for a moment. And here they're taking them back. You can see he's lifting one of the birds over here back into the nest. And here he's got his spray bottle spraying it. Now, this is James's wife, and I wanted to show a couple of her photos, so I wanted you to meet her. Her name is Kate, and that's my husband right behind her, Sterling. They were having a good day with all of this. So these photos are from Kate, and you can see that this is a dangerous operation for these scientists. Those chicks will bite you, they'll scratch you, and sometimes this is why they use this sock. They put it over the chicks' heads so that they can get at the feet without being bitten. And indeed, they come away with scraped hands every time.
Suzanne, I was going to ask about that. I was surprised that they aren't wearing gloves. Is it pretty typical for them to do this barehanded?
Yes, it is typical. And I think that's because of the delicate work that they're doing, like taking the blood. It's hard for them to do without really thin gloves, and a thin glove wouldn't protect you. You'd need a thick leather glove for protection, and that doesn't allow them to do the delicate work. So these guys are quite brave, and they really know what they're doing. And you can see the three chicks that are getting sprayed at the very end. That's Rob, and you can see what it looks like from the nest on our property behind. You see the three horses in the mountains in the background. So here are the three chicks with their bracelets. And I only go by the bracelets on the blue bands because you can actually see them. So this was band AU, and this was the least this was the lightest one, so that had to have been Pop. He weighed 1,415 grams, very healthy chick. And this band, a Snap's band, was BD, and they believe that it is a female, both because of her size and her aggression. And there's, you can see the BD band. So that would be Snap. And here we have Crackle.
Are the females more aggressive, Suzanne?
Yes, they are. They tend to be more combative. Remember, it's the female who stays at the nest and protects most of the time. And so she has to be pretty assertive. The male is the fisherman, and he'll chase things off, but she's the one who's the last defense against those chicks. And that's Crackle. So I'm going to show you a short video here that of why I think this was sort of the last minute that for them to be doing the banding. And this was the day after the banding. And you can see that the chick's behavior is already starting to change. They're entering a new phase. Up until now, their primary goal was to grow. Their primary job was just to grow and become sturdy. Now they're going to start to become independent. And I'm going to show you a few hints of how they are becoming independent. And this is just the day after they were banded. You can see the date and the time. This is yesterday in the morning. And isn't the sound wonderful to be able to hear that sound again? Here comes Swoop with a fish. It's dinner time. And they're all waking up. Now, I want you to notice she will come down. And when she comes down and takes that fish, you're going to see that the chicks start to feed themselves. They're going to get involved in feeding themselves. This is the first time we've seen that this year. She brings the fish over from Swoop, and you can see right away that one of the chicks is almost going to argue with her about who gets to eat that fish. So they're starting to take on the responsibilities of feeding themselves. And this is kind of a first. Now, she's still feeding them most of the time. But by the end of the day, by the end of one day, you'll see a difference in their behavior. So then in the early afternoon, you can see that this is a new behavior too. We call it helicoptering. That bird is exercising its wings in preparation of flying. So it starts by just standing on the nest and exercising its wings. And you'll notice there's some breeze. And I think when the breeze happens, it kind of stimulates them doing this. You'll see it do it again. There it goes. It's starting to exercise its wings. So they're entering a whole new phase. This will go on for a couple of weeks where they will practice flying, and pretty soon they'll fly up and over the nest. And then one day, towards the end of this month, they'll actually fly off the nest and return. But this wingersizing is what we call it around here, wingersizing, exercising their wings. And when they actually come up off of the nest, we call it helicoptering. But you can see this one, BD, and BD is Snap, is thinking she's gonna fly. Look at the color on her chest too. She has a necklace which is indicative of a female. That's, by necklace, I mean these dark colored feathers on her throat, her necklace, like her mother has. Okay, now watch what's happening here. One of the chicks is trying to eat some old dry fish by itself. Again, this is all new behavior that the chicks are eating by themselves, trying to do it themselves. These are some nice close-ups that we get with this camera. You can see their legs. You can see her feeding the chicks mouth to mouth. Nice big fish that Swoop brought. Notice how the chicks have little white ends on their feathers. They will keep those feathers as juveniles. And when they molt, which means losing their feathers, and by the way, birds of prey have to be able to fly all the time. So they molt feather by feather, one feather at a time, so it doesn't inhibit them from flying. They will molt back feathers that don't have the white tips, and their eyes will turn yellow instead of the bright orange. As you can see, these chicks are able to eat larger pieces. And even though she's feeding them right now, this is going to stop soon. They will soon start feeding themselves entirely. They've already shown an indication, and there goes a little more wingerizing. Now here comes Swoop. He's back to get the tail end of that fish. He thinks, I got to have my share on that fish too. So he's just back to retrieve the fish. The fisherman has to eat too. So this is 1 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday. It's a big fish. So there goes. Okay, now he comes back with a tail. I want you to watch. This is 7 o'clock last night. So watch what happens this time. He drops the tail, and the chicks take it. Harriet doesn't get it at all. One of the chicks takes it, and the other chicks are going to try to steal it from them. This is their first food fight, and you will see lots of food fights in the coming days. It can get really dangerous for the poor dad to bring a fish because the chicks will be waiting there to have a fight over who gets it. Sometimes they just flatten the dad right to the nest in competition. He's cleaning his beak, but the chicks are contesting who gets that little piece of tail. You'll see it better here now. Pretty soon it'll be a contest for a whole fish. They've really entered a different phase. And what the scientists try to do is band them well before this phase starts. So they banded these birds just in the nick of time. And you can see why they're way more active than they have been in the past. And that makes their work harder when they have them out of the nest if they're trying to stretch their wings, etc. all the time. And look at all the pin feathers. They're shedding their pin feathers. You can hear all the little birds in the nest underneath.
Suzanne, can you remind us how late in the summer do the birds stay in Montana?
They will migrate sometime between the 1st of September and mid-September. And the father, Swoop, will stay until the last one has gone. He will continue to feed them. Harriet will probably migrate sometime around the end of August. She goes first, and Swoop stays and keeps feeding them until they all migrate away. So there's a lot of learning going on here, how to tear a fish apart, how to eat a fish without being fed a small piece.
Suzanne, what does Swoop do while the scientists are banding the birds? Is he around?
Well, he wasn't much around this time, and I think that's because he was fishing. He brought a fish almost immediately afterwards. If he's at the nest, he actually gets more excited than she does because he's a little bit more used to it than he is. But I think he was down at the river fishing for most of that time. because it wasn't long after the chicks were back in the nest that he delivered a fish. We also had 2 intruders come at that time, so it was kind of a busy sky.
We've got a question here from Miss Novella.
What kind of fishes?
What kind of fish?
I don't know what that particular fish was, but they get a lot of trout, they get some whitefish, and they get pike, a lot of pike. Okay. There's a wide variety of suckers, a lot of suckers. So let me now bring up the actual camera. We can see the camera. And hear it as well. Okay, let me use the camera control to go in a little closer on Harriet. She's just standing kind of still there. Let's see if we can take a look at some of her eyes here. Now, excuse me while I have some issues with how this new setup has a different sort of way of manning the camera, and I'm not quite as accustomed to it. So I have some difficulties with the focus sometimes. It doesn't quite focus the same as the previous camera did. Makes it a little bit hard for me to focus all the time, but you can see Harriet's eyes, which are just full of these black spots, which really enables us to tell us that this is her.
Suzanne, we're still seeing the paused video. We're not seeing a zoom. I don't know if we're supposed to be seeing a zoom.
Yeah, you're supposed to be seeing, I think you are now. Can you hear it?
Yes, now we can hear it. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Let me see if I can get this in focus on her eyes. This is where I have real problems with this new setup. It's always difficult getting used to new things. And I've not used this kind of a setup before much, so I'm having some problems. Playing with the focus. Here it comes. Now you can see her eyes are all full of these black specks. This is how we tell her every year that this is Harriet. And what a magnificent bird. She's been here 14 years. One of the things that the scientists told us on Sunday was because of the bands, they know that only 30% of the chicks that are hatched and fledge survive the first day of migration. 70% die on the first day, the very first day. There's a place south of us called the Bitterroot Triangle where the eagles hang out waiting for immature birds of prey to come through on migration, and they pick them out of the sky. So the eagles are there waiting for them to migrate. You think about how difficult the life of an osprey is and how important it is that these birds be as strong as possible for that first day, just to survive the very first day. It's remarkable that she has come back all of these years. What a bird. I have to say, I've just gotten a lot of inspiration from Harriet and how completely committed she is to doing whatever it takes to raise her chicks and to make sure that they're well provided for. Both she and Swoop are just totally committed to this. And what an effort all summer long, and then only a third of them will survive their first day. And that's just the first day on many thousands of miles in terms of migrating. And then they have to survive several years away, come back, and try to find a mate. The life of an osprey is not an easy one. So I just feel such gratitude that we have these wonderful birds in our backyard. I can't think of anything more wonderful. So all of you in Texas there, tell me what you think about banning the birds. Is it worth the stress on the birds? What do you think?
What do y'all think? Is it worth the stress on the birds to get the bans on for the scientists? We're hearing lots of yeses around the room. Anyone disagree? Looks like we're pro-science in this room. Everyone is in favor of that.
Well, I personally think it's really important because much of the obstacles that they face now are human caused. You know, we've done a lot to disturb the climate and to disturb the traditional fishing areas, particularly away from the coast. You know, they've lost a lot of wetlands where they used to eat on the way to and from the migratory route. There's fewer wetlands where they can stop and fish. So I think we humans really need to do everything we can to increase the probability that they will survive. And we can't do that if we don't know what they need. So that's where the science is so important in my mind.
Suzanne, last time we checked in with you last Thursday, Swoop had been missing for a little while. Did y'all ever figure out where Swoop had been?
No, I didn't, but I do think it has something to do with the number of intruders we've had this year. We've had 2 different osprey just harassing this nest all summer. And I think he's trying to keep them away from the nest. So I think he was probably out on the fishing grounds trying to keep other ospreys away. It was very worrisome. All of us were quite worried. He didn't show up until about 3 in the afternoon that day. And we were so relieved to find him because, as I said, she could not have continued to raise these chicks on her own. They all would have died. Not her. She would ultimately have to feed herself, but she would not be able to protect them and fish for them at the same time. Her job now is not to feed them, but to protect them and to provide them shade. Look at how you've got one of them just right underneath your body getting the shade. If you watch during the day, you'll see her put her body between them and the sun all day long. She'll move her body as the sun moves. All part of her way of taking care of them.
All right, we've got another question here from Miss Novella. Can you say it again?
All of the fish from over there, they're edible.
Did you hear that, Suzanne?
No, I didn't. Can you repeat?
Yeah, she asked, are all of the fish over there edible?
Yes, I think all of the fish from the Bitterroot River are edible. And you know, they pick certain kinds of fish that are a certain level in the water. If a fish is too deep, they don't dive. And if it's too shallow, they won't dive. They look for the fish that are, you know, within reach of their talons, but not so shallow that they are going to hurt themselves by hitting the bottom. So they look for specific places that it's safe for them to fish. And they have to judge all that. So you think about those baby ospreys. They will never have tried fishing before they migrate. There's a bunch of eagles out there looking to eat them. And they're going to have to feed themselves and fly all the way down to your part of the world after they leave here. It's a tough life. It's a miracle if they come back. Like I say, I'm just so grateful that they've chosen this place to make their home.
Does anybody else have any questions for Suzanne about the ospreys or banding or the fish? What do y'all think of these birds? They're beautiful. They're amazing. Oh, here's the question. One more time. Hold on, Debbie.
How long will the band stay on the birds?
Their whole life. They'll stay on their legs their whole life. They're big enough so that as they grow, there's plenty of room.
Any other questions or comments about the ospreys, about Harriet and Swoop and Snap, Crackle, and Pop? Oh, Miss Novella wants to know if she can take the birds home with her.
Oh, I feel the same way. I have to say, it's illegal to have osprey feathers, but I have one of Harriet's feathers, and I'll show you. And the reason I know this is Harriet's feather is I saw it come out of her on the nest, and then I saw it fall to the ground under her nest, and I ran out there to get it. So I acquired it by accident, but this is just a jewel to me, an absolute jewel. And the reason it's illegal to have birds of prey feathers is because long ago, people shot them for their feathers. So it's to prevent people from killing birds of prey.
Any other questions or comments? Well, Suzanne, we have really enjoyed getting to see the birds and hearing about the banding, and what a treat to be able to hear them again on the video.
Oh, yes, it's a treat for all of us. And I want to thank you for joining me in this joy. I get such joy from sharing this with other people, and knowing that you care about them like I do really means a lot to me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing it with us. Do y'all want to wave goodbye to Suzanne and everyone in Montana?
Bye, and thank you for coming. Very
Thank
much
you so
appreciated.
much.